Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, You Mess with the Dog, You Mess with Me. A few years ago my ex and I lived with my mum. Directly next door to my mum lived a kindly old lady and her great-grandson, about 15, we'll call him Caleb. We shared a backyard. According to relatives and other neighbors, this kid was trouble. Once, Caleb took a pack of cigarettes from our vehicle, no idea how, as we kept it locked, and shot them up with a BB gun, leaving the mess right in our driveway. The list of butthole moves he pulled goes on and on. But that's not why I'm telling this tale. He had this bike he rode all day, every chance he could, up and down the street with some other boys. On more than one occasion he left this bike in our driveway behind our vehicles. Each time we put it in his yard, out of harm's way. Well, one day the bike goes missing. We have no idea how or why, but Caleb thought we took it, I suppose. One day my ex was taking the dog outside to use the bathroom and she ran into Caleb's side of the yard and into the bushes. Before my ex could get over there, she was mysteriously gone. We spent hours looking for this dog. While we were doing this, we see Caleb outside with his friends, laughing about something and staring at us. Ex and I go over to ask if they've seen the dog and they say no, but offer to look with us. They were looking, but not really looking. It was all really fishy. When we parted ways, they sarcastically said good luck finding your dog, and laughed. Days went by, we thought she was dead. But after a while one of the kids from Caleb's group of friends brings the dog to Caleb's great-grandmother's house. Dog is back, yay. We pretty much figured Caleb took her because of the searching incident and the fact that every time the dog saw Caleb she would howl and run inside. The poor thing was traumatized and wasn't the same for months. Even if he didn't take her, he was an idiot in many other ways and deserved what he got. While all this was going on, the bike was in our yard again, right behind the car. I guess Caleb got it back. One night, Ex and I decided we'd had enough and Caleb needed to pay for hurting our dog. Armed with the biggest knives we had along with some spray paint, we doctored up the bike. Slashed the tires, spray painted it pink, and scratched dog napper into the metal. We went far into the woods behind an abandoned house on our street and tossed the bike into a giant thorn bush. Caleb didn't mess with us again. The next one is titled, The Youngest Brother Was Sick and Tired of Taking Orders from Someone He No Longer Recognized as Family. Okay. I have two older brothers. Eldest is a good person. The middle is a monster. He is a meth-addled felon. He has tortured my family for 20 years and I have taken the brunt of the assault as the only person willing to openly challenge him. He stole my mother's wedding rings, my grandmother's car, and my TV, to name a few things. My family has decided to try again to welcome him back into their lives, so I followed suit. It's Christmas 2013, the best holiday celebrations I could never imagine. All is well. Middle brother walks in the door to collect presents 2 days after celebrations, strike 1. The middle brother drops bag of drugs when he walks in the door, strike 2. Middle brother criticizes the eldest brother's renovations and tells my grandmother she wasted her money. Strike 3. In the car on the way home. Decide it is best to go back into town together so it saves someone a trip. Middle brother asks me for my passport. I say, no, I can't do that. Middle brother concocts magical story where I have borrowed his ID to get into clubs when I was a teenager. Lies. I did not and would not. He says he needs it to get into a party. He's 300 pounds and 35 and would never be carded under any circumstances. Middle brother differs to his standard method of persuasion and starts yelling and is getting increasingly loud and argumentative. I tell him that it is illegal and that it would be very bad for him if he gets caught. There's a line somewhere between asking and demanding something of someone, he crosses it. My heart races like it used to when I was a boy. When he used to follow my friends and I and beat the crap out of us with his friends. I remember him pulling me out of a lake where I almost drowned. But it's not him anymore. The brother I knew is gone and there's a total stranger directly behind me demanding the symbol of my liberty. Strike ducking 4. I tell him that if he mentions my passport again on the ride home, I will crane the steering wheel into a snowbank and beat him within an inch of his life. I hear, "Give me your passport," in the voice of a man I don't know, from a face I don't recognize. Blood and adrenaline surge from my heart faster and more rapidly than I have ever felt. We pull into a parking lot. I open my door and wait patiently until that idiot works up the courage to fight me. He steps out and yells something I don't hear. I tell him that I'll give him one more chance to get back in the car without saying a word about my passport ever again. He says passport with a wily grin and expects me to be the same cowering boy that I used to be. The same kid who loved him and adored him and wanted nothing else but to be just like him. I connect the quickest and hardest fist I've ever thrown against another person directly onto his chin. Blood spurts out of his mouth with the second blow. He hits me twice above and below my right eye. I completely lose my crap and wail on the left side of his face until it is a broken and bloody ruin. If you're reading this, middle brother, duck you. The next one is titled, "We All Go Down Together." A little over a year ago, I was working at a company and my manager and I didn't see eye to eye at all. I work in IT and have been working with end-user computing for over 20 years. My manager was new to end-user computing and didn't like the fact I would correct her and that most of the company came to me with questions and bypassed her. After about 6 months, I started to notice things were going downhill fast. I went to her boss and raised my concerns to no avail. Toward the end, I had to travel and she wouldn't approve my expense report when I got back. We were not on speaking terms, so I emailed her several times. After a week and a half, I filed a complaint with HR and started looking for a new job. The day I met with HR, they went to her manager and within an hour my expense report was approved. She made up an excuse, saying the system was down, so that is why she didn't approve it. On a side note, when I met with HR I told them I felt she was retaliating against me and I felt she was going to try to get me fired. About a week later, I get an IM from her manager asking me to come talk about an issue with a contract. The odd thing was he asked me to meet him in an office by hour. I get there and HR is in there. They ask me all kinds of questions and after a while, they tell me they have to suspend me due to lies my manager had told them. I was being nice and not bad-mouthing my manager up to this point. Then the gloves came off and I told them the truth about everything, which was easily verified if they interviewed my teammates. HR and the VP talked among themselves and decided both of us would be suspended pending investigation. When I handed in my phone and access card, I told the HR person, "This was why I came to you as I knew she was going to try this." The next day I get a call saying I was being terminated, but she was also. I said I had been interviewing and I had a job lined up. I started 3 days later. A year and a half later my former manager still unemployed. The next one is titled, "How a Man Lost $8 million for Failing to Be a Decent Human." Alright, I have a story to tell from the finance industry. For those of you who don't know what we do, it's basically just being a realtor, but for companies instead of houses. This was a small investment banking firm, and we specialize in smaller players. We're talking companies worth $20–50 million. Our customers are typically salt of the earth, built their tire company from nothing but a shed and a truck over the last 30 years, and now they want to retire. But seeing as how many of them never learned accounting and whatnot, they need representation. Now one company has two 50% owners, and they hate each other. Can't have a civil conversation. Now, having two 50-50 owners is always a recipe for conflict, but this level of hatred was something I hadn't seen before. It was pretty clear one of the two had done something pretty bad for it to devolve to this stage. So let's call one Tim and one Roger. My first impression of Roger is that he's a nice dude. Down to earth, chill, and generally interested in things. My first impression of Tim is that he's a raging imbecile. We were at a restaurant I, and many other people in my city, hold in very high regard, and all he did, for an hour and a half, was complain about the food. He talked down to and mocked a waiter who dared to ask him what he'd like to drink, and proceeded to order $1,000 of wine he knew we were paying. My boss, having none of that, made it clear Tim is paying for that bottle, which I suppose put him in a bad mood. I am somewhat obsessed with food. I spend an unwise amount of money on food. I can sing you all the instrumental parts in the opening to Heston Blumenthal's cooking show. We're here on my recommendation. I love this damn restaurant, and I am on first-name terms with that waiter. The man starts talking down to me about my tastes after I order, says kids these days have no palate, and that I shouldn't be eating XO, and also, apparently, donating to vaccine charities is a waste of money, and I am some sort of idiot for doing so. So to be short, I don't like the guy. But not liking the guy isn't really a reason to seek revenge. However, after talking to Roger, we find out why they hate each other. You see, Tim had been stealing money from his employees, and the company. It turns out, employees started getting random checks bounced, and the company's lines of credit kept drying up. Because Tim had been making some rather extravagant purchases on the company dime. He had adjusted employee payroll downwards and increased his own. He had used capital expenditures to build himself a house. Apparently, his continued justification is that none of what he did was illegal. Technically true, he had helped grow the company, I suppose, and that he deserved more, but not his business partner. Roger ended up comping employees out of his own pocket, and Tim refused to pay back a dime. So at this point, the deal talks are going nowhere. As in, Tim and Roger just cannot stand to communicate with each other at all. But my boss, he hatches an idea. Why don't we just buy one of them out? We know how much the company is worth in the wider market. We'll just see if either is willing to take some cash up front for their share of the equity. I make models all day. I know how much this company is worth. It's worth about $24 million. Tim's stake is therefore worth $12 million. Complex, I know. Guess whose stake I suggest we buy? Tim's, of course. How much do I suggest we offer? $4 million. Now, to be clear, this type of thing has a downside. But Tim's reputation in his industry isn't good. In fact, after some canvassing, it turns out that most people know this company through Roger, and don't like to deal with Tim. Turns out being a thieving asshole is something one simply cannot turn off. Boss says okay, he'll send an offer letter, an NDA agreement, etc. Tim bites for $6 million. We sold the company 6 weeks later for $28 million total. Fuck you, Tim. Edit, no, Tim was not happy when he found out. No, he could not do a damn thing about it. Edit 2, I should mention that my boss and a few of his friends pooled the money to make the buy. They were not acting as part of the bank. Any offer they gave was part of the last one is titled, Made My Boss Cry. This story takes place in Scotland, United Kingdom, and is long. I've had some dumb luck the past 5 years of my work history. I am an administrator, office type. So I applied for a job. I had been out of work for 3 years prior due to a hormone condition and depression at Company A and got a job as a call handler in a telephone answering service. Over a few years I kept that same shitty job title and pay, but was actually more the office manager due to the workload and how much of a distance there was between what my daily work was compared to anyone else. So, long story short, I lost a baby. The company owner made a comment in front of me to a client, should have kept a hand on her halfpenny, meaning I should have kept a hand on my vag and not had sex conceived. So I walked out without notice, and because I was the only one running admin in the place, it all stopped and she lost her biggest client. Laughing face, I landed another job at Company B as an admin assistant. It should have been easy, something low-key to keep me financially until I could recover from losing the baby. Also at this time I had moved house and was saving for my wedding, which was made known to the owner of the company. That is why I applied for the lower ranked and paid position. Within the year I was running an entire central production unit for a chain of cafes and delis. Still on low pay and shitty admin assistant job title. You see a reoccurring theme here? As I was about to demand a pay rise and proper job title for the work I did, the owner puts the whole company into administration and cuts everyone's hours. I sucked it up to keep the place going. I worked hard and got the CPU into profit. Owner says everyone needs to slash their hours more because other departments are losing money. I refused to cut mine. I'm already down to the bone financially. He agrees to have a meeting about it but instead jets off on holiday. I hear back from Company C re a role I applied for as an admin, learn I have a new job to go to, so walk out the very next day. The place is still in administration many years later with massive job losses, and they closed half their locations. Turns out my work was the only thing keeping the CPU open, and when I left, they had to close it down because no one else knew how to run it and they failed a hygiene inspection too. Company C takes us to the true pro revenge. At first, things are amazing. Great hours, pay, and I'm treated really well. I start to put the past behind me, thinking the way things went at the last 2 companies must be a fluke. Company C rewards my hard work with a pay rise and better job title after 3 months. But then they start to take me for granted. After 4 months of being there, I am moved to the sister company, which is the installation branch, fitting insulation under government grants to residential homes. I am to run the installation and warehouse operations with a small admin team, and it will be temporary, with my reward being a move to office manager when the current manager Angela goes on maternity leave. On this basis, I accept. The idea was when Angela comes back, she will be moved to oversee another department. So while I am running installations, I have a nervous Angela to accommodate, as she is still my manager in theory and wants me to use her crappy basic spreadsheets so she can feel like she is still in control. But I also have 3 director owners, Swishy, Stupid and Sly, constantly coming in and contradicting each other over what they want and targets, etc. I juggle making everyone happy, meet the targets and get processes and procedures in place. Oh, and I'm still doing tasks from my old role, as they don't have anyone else to take care of that. I have issues with the team they hired to do admin under me. Lazy, slutty and shy. Lazy plays on Facebook all day, slutty flirts and chats all day, and shy is quietly handling way too much but too afraid to speak up. So I report the team issues and they get pulled into a meeting. Remember, I am a senior administrator, not a manager. I get brought in afterwards and Director Stupid decided that they are all perfectly fine and competent and it's my fault they aren't doing their jobs. I suck it up, thinking he may be right, and try to work on my management style. Nothing changes. In fact, it takes Director Sly coming in on a day when all 3 are off and I am doing all of their jobs by myself for the bosses to notice how little my team actually have to do. But again, why do anything about it when Mora 582 can take it on and cover it all as well? Nothing is done about the 3 stooges and my workload continues as is. Shortly thereafter it is announced the new office manager will be Claire. I am livid but think maybe I am going to be made the official installations manager, as this is hinted at by other managers. I have at this point only been in the new role 2 months. Then the stress got to me and I was off ill for a week. While I was off, everything fell apart. My admin staff stopped doing any work at all and some installs were reported as complete when they hadn't been. So Director Swishy swoops in and orders the whole place be audited. He suspends me and warns me to look for another job. He tasks the audit to Claire. Claire is 24 years old and this is her 2nd job ever. Claire looks and acts much older than she actually is, so you get fooled into thinking she is better than she is. She is also the type to blame others for her mistakes or great at hiding them. She gets to the root of those installs being declared complete when they weren't, as one installer presigning his paperwork. He would have brought that in and given it to Slutty, who should have then rebooked the job and put the paperwork back out. But of course she didn't, because she wasn't doing any work while I was off. So the bosses can't pin the blame on me. Before I went off sick, I was supposed to be off for 1 day and had left a detailed list of everyone's daily job and tasks so other managers would know who does what and decide to pull me back into my old role and put lazy, slutty and shy into lesser admin roles. This means no promotion for me. They then hire a new admin team and make one of them the ducking manager. She has no experience and sleeps with the installers. But wait, it gets better. 2 to 3 months later I am now working directly under Director Sly and the operations manager, Lizard King. In fact, I am doing all of Lizard King's work and taking abuse and bullying from him, as no one else can stand working near him. I am doing jobs well out with my remit, like tendering for work and running the entire QMS. I am in effect the assistant ops manager. No pay rise or job title though. Now we get to the end. I effectively hold the keys to the kingdom. There is no part of the business I don't know and haven't run or had a part in getting up. I am relied upon for almost everything. They call me the cornerstone of the office. At this point I've been with Company C less than 2 years. Claire is still called the office manager, but all she does is oversee a small team who submit completed installs to the funder for payment. She doesn't know anything actually office manager related. I have a run-in with Director Stupid. He allowed Lizard King to bully his assistant, so she quit. I am forced, despite protesting, to also take on her work, which is wiping his dumb butt. He calls me after hours with stupid comments like, "Did you photocopy X and call Y?" after I emailed him to say I had before I left work and verbally told him I had emailed him. I arrange a really important compliance audit to allow time to get it done right, and he calls them behind my back and rearranges, cutting the time I have to do the work in half. This compliance audit costs us thousands and is really important to get more work. It's all too much and I get sicker and sicker. Finally I decide I will quit. I tell the office yap I am thinking of quitting knowing word will spread, and it does. Director Swishy takes me aside and begs me not to leave. He gives me a paid week off and says to come in the Monday after for a talk. I think things are finally changing, so agree. Except that I notice on the Sunday that Director Swishy posts on Facebook that he is hungover and taking Monday off. So I don't go back. I get a phone call late on Tuesday and Director Swishy is literally begging me to come in. I tell him everything and that he doesn't even pay me enough for what I do. He starts to cry. His tears are like ducking bliss to me. Cry ducker. I tell him no way, I am done and he won't see me again. I then call up Company D, who is their biggest rival and most hated nemesis. Company D is owned by 2 former staff of Company C who were treated like crap, walked out and started up their own version of Company C. They give me a job. I then remember I never signed a non-compete, so I call up Company C's best sales staff and offer them jobs. I get their top man to come join us and he brings a handful of install leads with him, customers he was screwed out of commission on. Company C panic when they realize and try to set the lawyers on us. There is no case. They then call us and harass us, visit the office, etc. We don't back down. They actually think we have their entire lead database, we don't, and are shitting bricks. Finally I get a phone call from Director Swishy. Again, he is crying. Please don't ruin us. I know you are behind this. Please just destroy the database and this will all be over. Blah blah. I let him think I'm thinking about it. Eventually Company C is forced to buy a new database and only then do I call him back and tell him that we only ever had 5 or 6 leads he could describe as being on his database. But those leads came to us through a third party and we hadn't gotten any sales, so scrapped them. Company C have since closed the sister installations company down, most of the staff were made redundant for unrelated reasons not my doing, and are now a company of 3 directors, 3 managers and 1 admin from 80+ staff. Claire has been given all of my work and complains constantly as well as a demotion. Angela got fired for being useless, Lizard King has had his hours and pay cut, and Claire is going to be forced out soon as the owners are talking about selling up. I get all the updates from the company accountant whom they bullied so bad, she lost her hair and is now working for me part-time. Revenge, making your former bosses pay thousands for something they don't need, lose another $10,000 on compliance audits they failed when you walked out, and make at least one of them cry. Twice. Company D so far are treating me like a queen. If crap turns sour here, it won't matter. I have the keys to the kingdom again. Thanks for listening.